Namah Shivaya. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So what we are currently doing is the second level of vichara, which helps us to understand that even Dvaita is not the reality. Advaita alone is the reality. And so this is shown to us by the experience of the dream, and it is made to see us through a step-by-step approach. So here, as I promised to you, we will go into a little bit of an understanding of how Dvaita and Advaita, how Dvaita is a imposition on Advaita, and Advaita meaning non-duality, non-plurality, is the ultimate reality. So here, this is where I found Swami Akhandananda's consistent use of the word jnanam to denote consciousness. Because obviously English has to use something, some word has to be used, obviously, understand that. And the English use can be in one of two, it can be multiple ones, but the two most popular, kind of like the finalists. You know, the finalists. The two finalists for an accurate description of the self are consciousness and knowledge. And both have problems. Consciousness as a word has a problem. Why? Because we have seen it. It conjures up in our mind a quality. Ness, when you say consciousness, so the ness provides is feeling of, and so the very use of the word consciousness constructs a impediment in our mind because we think of it as equality. Knowledge has another problem because when we think of the word knowledge, we can only think of something of knowledge of what. If somebody says, I have the knowledge, so people will say, yes, please complete the sentence. Knowledge of what? No, I just have knowledge. So the other person will say, I don't understand what you're saying. So the word knowledge also has a baggage of requiring something outside of that. So the word jnanam also is similar in that manner. So you cannot completely say it is blameless. But I think it's good that this Sanskrit word of jnanam at least doesn't have a preconceived baggage Because you're not sure what jnanam is anyway. If you're not used to, we are not born with Sanskrit. We are only born with some vernacular language. But, so you have to understand what jnanam really means. So here, a Virakta Mahatma like Swami Akhandananda ji uses the word jnanam as the word for self. And the Shastra and all the interpreters of the Shastra take a little different view of this. So ultimately you can use the word Atma or Brahman, and sometimes Adi Sankara even uses the word Ishvara. So Ishvara, Brahman, Jnanam, Atma, Aham are all kind of like synonyms of the same thing, as is consciousness in English. But out of them, Jnanam is chosen by Swami Akhandananda ji, and I personally find it to be very appealing for my understanding. But also, please see that Swami Akhandananda ji describes this jnanam as either apaurushaya jnanam or paurushaya jnanam. So this distinction should be very clear in us. The paurushaya jnanam means the human knowledge. Knowledge of what? Aparoksha jnanam, and they're the same, by the way. They're the same. So one is, you can say, I'm the witness. So whenever you say, I'm a witness, so that presupposes witness what? But as you say, you can imagine, supposing you are witnessing something, and what you are witnessing disappears. Do you change? Not really. You remain the same, but your description was conditioned on what you are, if there was somebody there or not. This fact is discussed in considerable detail in Natakadipa Prakaranam, which we were talking about yesterday, that if you have a dance going on in this room and there is a light, so the light is very important because it has to light up the dance. But suppose, as it is described in the Panchadashi, one by one the dance finishes, there is clapping, the musicians pack up, the dancers take on off their costumes, and all the spectators also leave, and the room is now empty. But the light is still going on. Now it's back. It's back. I should have used to clear my throat in the meantime. So the light remains the same. In one case there was a dance, in the other case there was nothing. So in that sense, the Aparoksha jnanam, which is, this is, you should see this very fact. The Aparoksha jnanam means not human jnanam. If you want to use the word consciousness for a while, just because now that you know, this is not human consciousness. This is, if you want to call it, Ishvara's consciousness, Brahman. This is something which is which is not generated by human beings. It was already there. It is already there. The problem that comes in is we do not view this accurately. We only view it in an applied sense. So we will see that now in detail. I'm just leading up to this analysis. So we view this in an applied sense only. Very similar to if a child is looking at a light bulb, the child is only seeing the light bulb, not the electricity behind it. So similarly, we are spiritually children. We don't see the Aparoksha Jnanam, we only see Paurushaya Jnanam. We only see from the standpoint of a limited being only. When in fact the limited being, you and I, are appliances that are depending upon Aparoksha Jnanam, which is the basic electricity. So now let us look at a couple of ways how this happens. So now there are three ways of looking at it, which we have already touched on, but this helps to repeat, because this is a very important way to do our vichara, our meditation and so on. So repetition is not a defect, it's important. So you and I are sitting here, and from my standpoint, I'm going left with my hand. So this is left. From your standpoint, this is moving towards your right. So you have a certain vision of this being left or right. I have a different vision of what is left and right. Now, are the left and right a independent, individual vastus? No. This is a thought. Left and right is a east or west, is a thought specific to an individual. And the thought of left and right, of east and west, is based on what? Is it an independent creation? No. No. And it is very fluid. It's very fluid. As you're moving from one direction to the other, what was east becomes west. It's very fluid. This is how the changes in thoughts are. But east and west and the specific direction of anyone is all dependent on Aparoksha Jnanam. You cannot even think, you cannot certainly say, you cannot visualize, you cannot conclude if the Aparoksha Jnanam was not there. Similarly, you cannot even think or visualize a particular ornament without the underlying basis of that ornament. Cannot do that. I ask you to visualize a bangle. So yes, you hear the word bangle, and those of us that know what a bangle is can kind of like conjure up. If you close your eyes, you have some vision of what a bangle is. And you cannot have a bangle, word or the form of it, nama rupa, without having an underlying basis for it. So similarly, East and West are concepts that have to depend on some basis. Otherwise you cannot even have a concept. You see? You cannot have a concept without the basis. You cannot have a bangle without silver or gold or some metal or some wood or something like that. You cannot have that. There's no bangle in space. You can kind of visualize it with, your mind is crazy, you can do that. But not really. So therefore, our thoughts of East and West, I understand from a transactional, from a vyavaharic purposes, they're very useful. Very useful. If you're traveling, then it's very important. GPS has to say, are you traveling left or right or north or south? It has to give you some directions. But that's all from the individual standpoint. But the real question is the individuality. Is it independent? No. Because the individuality is simply a thought, a form, which has to have a basis. And it does. Aparoksha jnanam. You always have, so this is what is you say. When we say that an appliance has electricity, similarly we say that this is, when you say this is, so we already did that. Remember, we were talking about asti bhati priyam nama rupa iti amsha panchakam adyatrayam brahma rupam jagat rupam tato dvayam. So when we say this is, so when we say the chair is, which is a fact, the chair is. Now the question is the chair independently is, or is it sitting on something which is permanently is? And if you really do this analysis, and the Shastra suggests that, please, the answer is, there is something which is permanently is, and in that isness, chair can come and go, tables can come and go, carpets and people can come and go. This is exactly what happens in the dream, and that's exactly what is happening now. That there is some isness. And where is that isness? Is that independently in each chair? Each chair has its own isness? No, it doesn't. That isness is you. That is the Aparoksha jnanam. That you are, and superimposed on you are the various forms and things that are coming in. You always are. This is where I get confused. This is where I get confused. I don't understand that I am that isness which everything else is borrowing. And this isness is not your creation. This is Ishvara. This is the isness. This is called Aparoksha Jnanam. So if you do the analysis from the standpoint of space, deshataha, you come to the conclusion that all desha are just an individualized version of the Aparoksha Jnanam. That's it. And it's all fluid, it's all changing, and it's highly individualized. What is west for some people is east for some other people. What is west for you may become east in just few seconds. But no matter what form it is, they all are based on Aparoksha Jnanam. There's no change in Aparoksha Jnanam. And you say, so this exactly you can say, East is. That isness is Aparoksha Jnanam. The Eastness, if you want to call it that way, is just the form, which is changing, which is different. So, the deshataha, we understand how the beauty of the Aparoksha Jnanam, not the Paroksha Jnanam, but Aparoksha Jnanam, how it works. It is fundamental to any changes. It is always there. Always there. That is the Atma, that is you. Always. Independent of. Now let's talk about always. Let's go to the Kala, time. So this was with respect to Desha. But now look at in terms of, so you can say from the standpoint of Desha, it is there everywhere. You see? It is there sarvagataha. From a standpoint, what is the implication of our analysis with respect to space? The implication of the analysis with respect to the space is that the isness is space independent. It is space independent. Sarvagataha. This is where I have to understand, and I will go there one day, that it's not that I'm only existing here, I'm existing. So I'm there everywhere. But my feeling is I'm here. I am here is from the standpoint of this upadhi. It's like saying there is the same electricity, but I see that electricity only in this appliance. Yeah, I understand that. But look at it, the electricity which is independent of all appliances. And so here the difference is the electricity is an object, whereas Aparoksha Jnanam is you. You are there everywhere. This is why I have to see very clearly. This is a fact. Now let us see, I am always there. One is I am there everywhere. The other one is I am always there. Kalataha. Same one. What is past is highly individualized. What is present is highly individualized. But when you say, I was there because I was. I was means I am. That I amness has not changed, but the time has changed. And the time is only specific to individuality. There is no absence of time in the Aparoksha jnana. It's the same knowledge. And the same knowledge can have the coordinates of time and as well as space. So it has relativity only from the standpoint of individuality. With the individuality, it's just exactly like a wave of the ocean. Yeah, you can talk about a specific manifestation of the ocean at a specific time, that's okay. But the individuality of a wave doesn't mean that the totality of the wave has disappeared, or the totality of the water has disappeared. No. It is only being defined from a reference point of a given wave. Okay, that's fine. But is it exclusive to the water? No. Cannot be exclusive of the water. Not exclusive to, but not exclusive of the water. It is simply a superimposition on it. So the same thing is true for the time. When you say, I was not there, this is what we say, that our feeling is, this is the thing to see really. Our feeling is, our conclusion is, I was not there before my birth. I was not there. And the other side of the coin is, I will not be there after my death. So both are pointing out to a standpoint of individuality, but you are not an individual, you are the whole. You're pointing out different things altogether. Remember that story about the Mahatma who was being scolded by this woman who said, you are a fake. And all the people sitting there, this is a real story, Swami Akhandananda says. He says, I was there in this audience and this lady was really berating him. And this fellow was sitting there quietly, not perturbed. And this reminds me of this very interesting. Swami Dayanandaji we had a week retreat in, I think it was in Arcata, in some college there. I can't remember, somewhere there. So there were like, maybe a couple of 100 people in the audience, and Swamiji was talking. And suddenly one of the guys, two people actually, I remember there were two people, two men, young men, got up and say, just shut up. Don't talk about this nonsense about Hinduism. Just terrible. So Swamiji sat down and he became quiet. All of us were saying, what is happening here? And they just started shouting and said, what are you doing in this country? You're spreading false things. You are idol worshippers. And you should just go back home and just be with yourself. This doesn't make any sense. So they went on and on and on. And so Swamiji just kind of smiled at them and said, okay, all right, what do you want me to do? I mean, he was not saying just get out at this moment, but so that just be quiet. So finally, I think they could see that they were not wanted in the room, and they left. And then we continued on. There was nothing. We all kind of looked at each other and said, wow, that was weird. That was it. So similarly, this woman goes up to the Mahatma and said, you should be ashamed of yourself. You are a fake. So everybody said, Swamiji, she's talking nonsense, stop her. So he said, no, she's talking about somebody else. He said that loudly, that no, this lady is talking about not me. And she said, no, I am talking about you. You, this one. So he said, no, you're not talking about me. It's okay, I understand. So I don't know what happened, she finally quit or something. So this is the situation, that, this is like saying to an appliance that is malfunctioning, you should be ashamed of yourself. You cannot continue. You're gone. What kind of a bulb are you? This is what happens when the bulb, fuses or something. We get mad. When the battery, we have to get a new battery. But then nothing happens to the electricity. You're not blaming the electricity, you're blaming the appliance. You cannot address the electricity. It is beyond you. So this is the situation that we have. That really, from a standpoint of time, also, I am not to be individualized. I am not just here now. Oh yeah, this is what I didn't complete that. So the feeling was that before I was born, I was not there. So you are only talking about, this is exactly the same situation. You see that? This is exactly like this lady talking to the Mahatma and saying, you should be ashamed of yourself. So we tell ourselves, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're talking about Atma and so on, and you were just born 50 years ago. How can you say you are the Atma? The Atma is very quiet and says, no, you're not talking about myself. You're talking about the individuality. No, I'm talking about you. No. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't even see me. So, kalataha also, there is no limitation. You cannot say I was born. I've never been born. I'm not capable of being born. I'm not made up of something that can come up. Because anything that has to come up must to have some parts, some vikara. Aham nirvikalpa, nirvikara. Not possible for it to. Time cannot touch me. So, kalataha also, the Aparoksha jnanam is untouched. Then the third one is, so deshataha, kalataha, third one is vastutaha. Vastutaha means, yeah, but this is me, I cannot be somebody else. Yes, we understand. But vastutaha also, you cannot be, Atma cannot be limited. How? Because we said Kala and Desha are both mithya. So as Chandogya Upanishad says, Vacharambanam namadheyam mrittika ityeva satyam. So, to say that this is a cup is just a way of talking, because the cup does not have its own weight. The weight of the cup is the weight of the clay. The touch of the cup is the touch of the clay. The shine of the cup is the shine of clay. Everything is clay. When you are putting it out, you are really only touching clay. Where is the cup? Yeah, for transactional purposes, you are saying the clay has to be made into some kind of a cup type of a shape, and so you might say there is a transactional change in the clay. Okay, we'll grant you that, but not in reality. Not in reality. So therefore, we can say that the individualism is like that. Individuality of meaning yours and my separate feeling, existence, transactions, value, relationships, all are there, yes. But is there any reality to it? Because the reality of the individuality is totality. The individuality is the Advaita. So the Dvaita is the superimposition on the Advaita. It's just a way of looking at the Advaita. There is no separate reality to it. So Vastutaha also, another thing that I didn't mention. And Swami Swami Akhandananda ji deals with this in much more detail in Mandukya Upanishad. So I'm borrowing his talks from the Mandukya, from the Karika, Gaudapadacharya's Karika. So he says, so we have already defined that Desha and Kala are both mithya. Mithya in the sense that you have a cupness. The cupness is a mithya. Right? The cupness is a mithya because you know the definition of mithya, that one that kind of appears to be on its own, but it is dependent on something else. There is no individual, you cannot say the cup and you cannot have a fight between the cup and the clay. Clay will say, okay, just get away from me. The cup cannot say, I can get away from you. I can fight with you. Cannot do that. You cannot have any relationships, any friendship, any fight between Asat and Sat. Cannot do that. The cup cannot fight with the clay because it depends, it is clay. So therefore, the cup is a mithya. In the same way, individuality is a mithya. Individuality means I have a certain status. I'm well read. I'm a teacher. I'm talking to you. I'm conducting this retreat. This is the individuality. This is just a name and form on Aparoksha Jnanam. There is only one thing which is there, which is Aparoksha Jnanam. Everything else is just a superimposition on it, just a name and form. So this is the nature of the second set of vichara. that really speaking, having congratulate yourself that I'm glad you did the viveka between Atma and Anatma. Now let's go forward to complete it, that the Anatma is none other than the Atma. Anatma, the whole world is nothing but me alone. And it is just the way of not understanding it. As long as you see that this world is different from me, your understanding is not complete. The same thing, when recognized, has a different meaning altogether. There's a couple of stories that can illustrate this to a small extent. So one was given by Swami from Swami Dayanandji, and the other one from Swami Akhandananda. Real life examples. So Swami Dayanandji one time was traveling on a flight from somewhere to New Delhi to go on his way to Rishikesh. In those days, the Dehradun airport was not functioning very much, and so you had to take a train. It might have been functioning, but not that too many planes were not there. So he was going from, I think, South India, from Chennai maybe, to New Delhi, and on his way to Rishikesh. So he sat down, and there was a person from Australia who was sitting next to him. And Swamiji was talking about it. So this person from Australia was pretty bulky. So he was actually, he had, the common arm. So he was taking the complete, Swamiji was kind of looking at, one side of it. And anyway, so they were friends and they were talking about it. They had shared a meal and, talked about weather and politics and a lot of things. They were there for like 2-3 hours together. And so then Swamiji got a little closer. He says, where are you going? What brings you to India? So he says, I'm going to meet a Swami. So he says, really? Which Swami? He says, you may not know him, he lives in Rishikesh. So I'm got to see him. One of my friends was recommending him very much, and so I have some other things that I want to do, but main thing I want to do is I'm really looking forward to seeing him. So wonderful. So Swamiji says, what's his name? He says, his name is Swami Dayananda Saraswati. So this is a very interesting situation. So here, does he lack the experience of meeting him? No. Has he not touched him? He's actually touching him right now. Because being so bulky, he was half of his space, Swamiji, he's also taking that. And so he's touching him, he's had experience. Has he not talked to him? Does he know? Yes. So what is missing? Just an introduction. That's all. Vacharambanam namadeyam mrittika ityeva satyam. Just some name, form, etc. that would evoke in him saying, it's exactly the same thing. So this is one story. The other story, Swami Akhandananda says that I have heard this. This is not his own personal experience, and it might have been concocted a little bit, but it's very possible that it wasn't. So this story is about, and this is very true in the old India. A lot of people from Rajasthan, Marwar regions of Marwar is a part of Rajasthan, isn't it, Sakshi? Okay, so Marwaris are traders. They are very successful traders and they travel a lot. So a lot of the Marwaris used to go to different cities to make a living. In the old days when there was, maybe railroad was there, but that was not even railroad anyway. So this Marwari person went to Calcutta to earn a living. Before he left, he was married and his wife was pregnant with a baby. And at the young age of 23, 24 or something, he left home and went to Marwar. He went to Calcutta. And the rest of the family is all staying there. Years passed. This is part of the story that we cannot relate to. But in the old days, people would just leave and then, have some business or something and not come home. Years passed. And he always thought about it, and so his baby was a boy. So they would correspond with each other and so on. But he never had a chance to come back home. One day he said, once my business is established, I will go back home. So 16, 17 years passed by, and he finally decided now it is time to go home. So he goes into, he takes some conveyance and stays overnight at some rest home or motel or hotel or something, whatever there was in India. And the story goes that where he was staying, he was disturbed at night time by a very bad coughing person who was so sick and coughing that it disturbed this man's sleep. So this guy went to the manager and said, you have to change my room or maybe get the other person out because I cannot sleep at all. He's coughing all night long, making so much noise. So he asked that other person to please change the rooms and go someplace else. So in the morning, they had a common breakfast. So the same coughing person came there at the breakfast, and he's still coughing, and just this or the other. So he said, "What's wrong with you? What's happening?" He said, "Sir, I don't know. I just got a cold or something, and I am traveling, and I'm going to Calcutta to meet my father. I have not seen him for 15 years." So he said, "What's your name? Where are you from?" This was his own son. And he said, this man said that I would really kind of hated to be disturbed at night, but once I found out it was his own son, he took him to a doctor and started treating him. His whole relationship changed. So Swami Akhandananda says, please see, this is our situation. Everything that you see is really you. It is your own projection. This is a dream. The dream that you have is not different from you. It is really your own projection. But at this point, because of not knowing, this is what they say. This is very famous in saying this, that it's like the Maya is a very strong drug that has made you completely confused about things. It's just you think about the dream as being different from you. It's not different, it's your projection. And the waking state also. So at any point, all the people are nothing but Parameshwara alone. But we think we are the Jiva. And when we think we are a Jiva, then everything else becomes separate from me. And we have an antagonistic relationship, more or less. And we are disturbed by it. Just like this guy was disturbed by the coughing of this boy. He's disturbed by it because the minus was not there, only otherness was there. And we don't like anybody else to disturb me. But the same disturbance, if it is discovered to be nothing but me, or in this case mine, we have to project a meanness into it, or even mineness, that if this is recognized to be none other than me, then that same experience does not become antagonistic. So therefore, in this stage of the vichara, the second stage of the vichara, which we will continue on with some other things and so on, is to show you that the anatma is not separate from the atma. It is just a feeling of otherness, and our real objective in life should be to accept things as they are, enjoy it, and not be bothered by it, not from the standpoint of what cannot be cured must be endured. Not that. It is that so this is where I was pointing this out earlier, that this transition from Dvaita to Advaita cannot be just done in one step. However, the objective of the Dvaita being Advaita should always be kept in mind. And then we need to progress towards it. And how quickly you can get there all depends on you. It depends on your maturity, your wisdom, and so on. So how quickly we do that, we cannot tell. It's all up to you. But at least recognize that it is not as easy. You have to make a decision. And the first step of that really is vairagya. So this is where, we often talk about it. I just had a couple of talks with some students and so on. And which is to distinguish between prarabdha karma and kamya karma. Prarabdha karma and kamya. Prarabdha karma means going ahead with things that you are supposed to do. Your family demands, friends, that is important because it is all part of prarabdha. Kamya karma is new ideas. Let's do this. Wouldn't it be nice? So for a sadhaka, the first step in this transformation from Dvaita to Advaita is develop vairagya. At least be free from trivial, unnecessary things in your life. At least do that. And once you do that, you will discover that you are okay the way you are. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to make this, that or the other. That itself will be a big revelation. And it will accelerate the process towards keeping the whole world as an appearance and not something you have to grapple with. This way you continue doing it and it ends up in complete Advaita, where you see the whole thing as nothing but your own projection. This is the feeling, this is the experience of the Mahatmas that we must keep in our mind as our goal. You and I may not really have come close to it yet, but unless we have a goal, we're not going to make it. Otherwise we'll be just wandering around aimlessly. So that is the thought process of the second stage of the vichara. This will lead to some mananam, which we'll be doing very shortly. So there are two other sections coming up after this. I think I'm fairly done with this general. I think we have already created the right thought process for this conversion of Dvaita to Advaita, but then the consolidation with respect to Mananam, and also the theory of creation, whether there is some recreation or not. We will tackle that next, and that will be the next two things. So we have how many classes to go? We have one today, more to go. 3 more, 4, and 2 more, 6 classes. Okay, I think we'll be able to complete it. Be good. All right. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadai Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.